Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Russ Jones.
And Brad Kennan here.
We are wide open.
So
How are you, my
doing?
friend?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Are getting your workouts in? We're after the first of the year. What's today? Today's the 10th.
I try. I go. I even went today. I've been going every single day. Um, except today, I went a little late. I didn't go in the morning, so I went after work, and there was a line for everything. And I said, "Do you know what? This is." I did 30 minutes on the treadmill, and I said, "This is not even worth it to me."
So, is there all these people we didn't recognize?
Oh
You know,
my
the typical
gosh,
first of the
there's
year
so many people
people.
I've never seen before.
Yeah, I guess we all kind of had to push through it for a
Yeah,
little
so
while.
yeah, so I'll get up in the morning and go, and then I will continue to push on from there to make sure we get to take everything taken care of.
I always tell patients that I never want them to go longer than 1 hour. I'm like, I don't care if you talked for 45 minutes because your best friend showed up at an hour, you leave because, all these people go and they just go so long that, you just can't stick with it. It takes up too much
Right,
of your life. So, you know,
right. I
go for an hour, put earbuds in and call it a day.
I always kind of feel bad because I go and I do my whole I do some cardio for whatever that is, and then that's 10 minutes or 15 minutes at the beginning, and then you go work out and it's literally like 52, 53 minutes, and I feel like I just got there, but I feel like I did my cardio, I did my set number of exercises, 6 to 7, sometimes 8 different exercises, and I'm like, you know what, just because I'm fast doesn't mean I'm not effective. So
Yeah.
I move on.
Yeah. I went in the woods today. It was, I don't know, like 20 something when I went in today. But, it's like you walk up a mountain. Everywhere you can go in West Virginia, you have to walk up. It seems like, you get to come down eventually, but everything's up to start most of the time.
Right.
And so it was kind of fun getting out there. I visited 2 game cameras I hadn't been to since spring. They were about 2.5 miles out. I found one footprint, I think, but it just wasn't good enough to cast. And
You always say that.
I tell you that, man. I see these tracks that people have, especially like that. The Blue Mountain area where they have that lost soil, and western part of Kentucky has that same sediment soil that holds tracks for like weeks and weeks and weeks.
Right.
And they have to, like, if they just walk down the middle of a gas wall road, there's leaves all over it, and you just seldom get to see it. So it's
Right.
hard to find a track.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I mean, I can see. They say cast everything, but honestly, by the time you get out your water bottle, get out your casting material,
Yeah,
do all that up, mix it all up, you're 2 miles back, you put it in, you go do this, you go do that, you
yeah,
wait around, it's cold, and you're just like,
yeah.
it's probably really not, unless it's a really good track that's really cool. You're right, it's probably not worth it.
I mean, it's heavy. Like, I don't know how much the backpack was weighing, but I was carrying 2 cameras with, they have the lock on it, so it's kind of heavy.
Right.
And then I had 2 bags of hydrocal that I carry all the time, and they're probably 7 or 8 pounds, maybe, those 2 bags. And then you're carrying 2 bottles of water because, one, you might get thirsty, and two, you might find a track where you don't have water. And really, that's not enough, but you can't carry everything. And then you need a headlamp because you might hurt yourself and you might be out there at night.
Right.
And um, it's winter, so when I'm carrying that backpack, I have a chest harness on for a pistol. I mean, it's just a lot of weight on you today.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. So
It's 5 miles, so it took like 4 hours by the time I was putting up one of those DNA traps, one of those low tech ones where, you know, you say bacon grease and I smear it all over the tree. I try to find something to stand on. I'm 6 foot tall, so I'm on something and reaching up as high as I can and smearing it all around the tree, and then put packing tape, a couple rounds around it. So, hopefully someone will come up and brush against it so I can get, I'm not the only one doing that. A lot of people are doing that across the country. So it's not like, that unique, but, peanut butter, baby jars out there, a couple new cameras out. haven't went through I didn't have time to go through the card today to see what was on it.
I'm sure you'll get an opportunity to.
Yeah, Thursday is supposed to rain all day, so it's going to be 60 and rain. So,
oh really?
If we get a couple hours, I'll be in the woods somewhere. But if it's raining the whole day, I'll probably review that.
Okay. Let me see here. What are we doing tonight, Russ? We're boring people at this point in time.
Okay, so we
gotta get to this.
Okay, let's get this. We want to talk about what we think right now is the best evidence out there, whether it's audio, video, whatever it happens to be. So some of the people that are listening are going to want to try to, if they want to see what we're looking at, if they're not familiar with it, they can flip over to YouTube and watch it there rather than Spotify or Apple or wherever they're getting it at.
Right. So,
and I know you've kind of put them in an order that you like. And some of these are going to be things that people have heard of, but probably didn't get to hear the backstory behind them. Because I know a lot of times when I post some of these things, people say, well, where's the rest of it at? I mean, why did he quit filming there? But, you don't want to show people 20 minutes of, if I get something like you'll have today 4 hours of video of me walking. So you don't want to see all that for the 20 seconds that I might have seen something.
Correct. All right. So,
okay.
We've tried to get 10 pieces of evidence, but we're limiting it to 9 because A, of time, and B, there's some other things that we didn't get edited. And so I'm going to pick one.
Okay.
And a lot of people, they don't know if it's evidence, if it's not evidence. I believe that it's very good evidence. It's the 911 Oregon call back in, I think around 2012. It was a gentleman had his German Shepherd was killed previously, correct?
Yeah, killed that night.
Yeah, that night. So something, the light switches on in his backyard, and he's on the phone with 911, and just the amount of surprise, astonishment in his voice tells me that this man's not lying. And we'll just get to it. How about that?
Okay. Sounds like we're going to do a meditation.
Right.
Everybody take a deep breath in.
Right. Hopefully I didn't. I probably should have gone and edited some of this out.
We're going to do our 4, 7, 8 breathing now. So take a deep breath in.
With someone or something crawling around out here.
A person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this running across the yard. A good-sized man, or something that looks like a man. I don't know what it was. Just that it ran across the yard. Jesus Christ, you better see him.
Hello?
Get somebody out there.
What's going on now,
That
sir?
son of a bitch is about 6'9". I don't know.
You see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Okay, hang on.
He's right.
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he in your yard?
He's looking big.
So, a very short call. We know some background to the information to what happened. His dog was killed. This thing shows up, standing in his backyard. He's surprised. What's your thoughts?
So I know that this was acquired by a Freedom of Information request, as I remember. And you heard him call his dog, I think the shepherd's name was Thea, and you heard him say something. But when he went out there, he saw his dog flying. And when it hit, the dog was dead.
Oh, wow.
And, when I hear that, it reminds me there was I can't remember which highway, but it was a very, very busy. I know the West Coast people, the Pacific Northwest would know right offhand, but there was a call that 9 different people had called 911 about a Bigfoot on the highway, and it kept almost getting hit. And one of the calls was a patrolman calling in.
Oh, wow.
And, but I've never got to hear that one. I've seen articles on it and whatnot, and people talking about when past the Bigfoot, they could see fear in its eyes. You know, it was fearful. And, you know, it's weird how there's things like that. You know, you can't find a track like I'm just talking about, and then they're out there running down the freaking road.
And where was this at?
It was in Pacific Northwest. I want to say it was in Washington, if I remember right.
Oh, I think I do remember that. Are you sure it wasn't by Portland, Oregon? Was the one
No,
by the
I'm not
tunnel?
sure. I don't recall. It could have been in Oregon. I just remember it was up in that Pacific Northwest.
And I think I remember reading the story, and it was you're right. It was I think an overcast, rainy time or something, and this thing was kind of running down the freeway, and people saw it, and it couldn't get off. It was coming down the side of a mountain, I think, and it really couldn't go back up the mountain, and it really had nowhere to go. So it was kind of like, you know, you ever seen a deer on the freeway that kind of gets caught?
Yeah.
And it just can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's either going to get hit or go off the
Whatever
other direction it came. So
I think that, you know, like that man that called in, some circumstance like that might be one where, you know, the Bigfoot is actually killed, and we'll hear about it because, you know, one's coming in, it's stealing somebody's chickens, or, you know, harassing their dogs, or whatever it happens to be, you know, because a lot of people, if you just, you know, we're all close to our dogs, and if we just lost a dog, and there's a good chance that, you know, we're going to go out there armed and ready to shoot something.
Right.
Hopefully everybody has something large enough to do the job if you're shooting.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. You know, I know we're going to these things. So if you were going to have a gun that you had to shoot a Bigfoot, what would you carry? And I mean, something realistically that you're going to be carrying on your person, you know, not 50 caliber or something like that, or or you're driving a tank.
No. I have a next to my bed, so in case anybody ever wants to break into my house, this is what you're going to run into. I have a scar.
We have a Rottweiler.
I have a Rottweiler too, but I have a scar in 308.
Okay, what is a scar?
A scar is a military.
Is this SCAR?
SCAR.
Okay.
It's actually, I think it's a Scar 17. It is a.
I see a type in there, so you can try to find a picture to show me.
Yeah, I will show you what this is. How do I? Let me see this. Present. Share.
So what caliber is that?
It's in 308.
308. So that's what the sniper rifles are.
Some of them.
308. 3 of them. Okay.
So can you see this?
Not yet.
Okay. Can you see that?
No.
You can't see.
Is it a ghost gun?
It's not a ghost gun. So here I'm gonna do something else here. Scar 17 actually had a friend of mine that was in the military, and he this just thing is not. How am I not?
I mean, is that big enough that you think that it would get the job done?
Yeah, I do believe so.
With one shot? Would you have to head shoot it?
Yeah, but here's the thing. My Scar has I think it's a 20 or 30 round mag.
Yeah.
Semi-automatic weapon. So.
Of course, they're faster than a bear. A bear's running 35 miles an hour. So, you know what I mean? When it starts at you, you're not getting 35 rounds off.
No, I tell you what, man, if this thing keeps coming after hitting with this is what I had a good friend of mine that he was in the military. He was in a Ranger, and this is what he carried. This is what he carried in war. So, okay. Can you see that?
No. So when I'm carrying something on my hip, I'm carrying a 40.
Here we go. That's what I did not do.
Oh, okay.
So that is, I have that weapon right there.
Okay. If nothing else, it is cool looking.
It is cool looking,
and it's locked and loaded and ready to go. You don't have to do anything.
Absolutely.
You just pull the trigger.
I got to flip it off safety, but
okay,
it's literally right next to my bed. You know, the charging handle's been pulled, so I literally have to flip it off safety.
How much can people buy those for?
I'd say 3,000 maybe.
Okay.
So
you know, I'm carrying a 45, which is clearly not big enough. I mean, it would not kill a bear probably most of the time. It's probably not going to kill a Bigfoot, but you know, you got to carry something on your hip. and maybe you get lucky and you shoot it in the eye and it hits its brain and it kills it or whatever. Today I was carrying, and most of the time through the winter I'm carrying a 10 millimeter Glock, 16 shells, so I feel like that will do a job. I used to carry a 357, but I'm not carrying that so much anymore.
Was that a revolver, I assume?
Yeah, the 357 was small. It was just something that because remember, for years I did not carry any until you start talking about that missing 411 stuff.
Right. So you got to remember, a small snub nose with a short barrel 357, the effective range of that weapon is about 9 feet.
Yeah, so you're shooting once before it's on you.
Right. Hopefully the loud noise will deter it from eating.
But I started running into those druggy people. I kept finding pot, and so it got to a point where you just had to start carrying something. And when I got where I was cutting down the areas I was going, I was more confident that I would find something when I was going out. And so you just got to be prepared. I mean, 99.9% of the time, as far as we know, they don't want to be seen, and they're going away from you. But they do. I'm sure there's some things historically that we've talked about a couple of those cases that Bigfoot could be aggressive, or maybe there's an older one, or maybe there's a juvenile, or maybe one's injured and they're starving for food, and
there you are. You got 3 things of peanut butter with you, and you're free game with this.
That's another thing that was adding weight to my backpack, is peanut butter
and some trail mix.
Yeah, I know trail mix, but it was peanut butter for sure.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so what do you got next? I'll try to hold my comments to a minimum here.
All right, so we have discussed these. So these are just not mine, by the way, folks. Russ and I both. So here I'm going to go ahead and add this.
So if people disagree, they can just go and make comments and say that you screwed up when you were marking these, because these were clearly not real.
July 8th, that is actually my birthday, is July 8th. And this is, this gentleman, Russ.
Yes. Actually, he's going to be on the podcast here in the next few weeks.
Correct. So this gentleman was I have no idea where at in Florida.
No.
He filmed this. And this is called the Florida Skunk Ape. If anybody wants to Google it, it's Shealy, Shealy. Is that how you spell it?
Yeah, Dave Shealy.
Dave Shealy. This is
runs the Skunk Ape Museum in Florida.
Correct. And he's
a treasure hunter.
Correct. So we're going to have him on a couple weeks. So we're going to discuss this video. But this is 2 minutes of pretty good video. So this thing is, it's fairly far off. You get 2000, so he's probably using some sort of non-digital camera at this point in time.
Yeah.
Maybe a high 8 or a VHS or something like that. I think I remember somebody saying that they pulled off to the side of the road, got the camera out, and started videoing.
There's a lot of good video out there, but the problem is that unless you just literally know the people that are doing it, you just don't know if it's real or not.
Right. So everybody wonders why this stuff's shaky. He's probably zoomed in pretty far on this thing, and you just can't hold it still.
Yeah.
So if we're going to watch it, we're watching. So it's kind of disappears a little bit, and then it's going to come back out. So I have comments about.
Seems weird that it was right at the edge of the woods. It looks like, why it wouldn't just continue into the woods rather than, continue to take a kind of a left there and walk out through the middle of the field more.
Right. So here you go. I got it right.
Yeah.
What does that look like to you?
I hope that Dave doesn't hear this before we have him on, you know what I mean? Because he might have a backstory and I may say, oh, okay. But I mean, and it could be from that distance, but certainly the proportion looks weird and it looks like something mimicking the Patterson-Gimlin film.
Right. So
of course it could be because it would be the same animal, but the proportion certainly looks different.
So, the head is the head's actually fairly large. It does start making pretty good distance, which that's pretty fast.
Seems like it's pretty close to him at that point.
Right. So we'll have to find out. So besides that little piece of I can't really tell. I think that's absolutely a pretty good piece of video. And it's evidence that something exists. I don't know where they're at. How would this guy, if you look at it, you got this little area right here, like underneath the arm.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, did it seem to you like when it was, aside from that Patterson film, if it was wearing a suit that is stretching its arm out, trying to get the suit straightened up a little bit or something?
that's, just these couple frames
Yeah.
really throw me off. But by the time you get kind of towards the end and this thing starts running, right here, that is pretty fast.
Yeah.
Can
you imagine if it was 20 years later? I mean, how good this film would be,
right?
Versus what he had available then.
Yeah, even with an iPhone or something like that. But even a guy in a suit, we'll find out how far he is away from this.
Yeah.
It would be fairly difficult to do this. I think it would be.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I know that when one time when I was talking to Doug Hychek, which we'd had on before, about whether we needed a body or whatever, Doug was convinced that if someone had fairly close 4D, 4K video, that it would compel a lot of people.
absolutely.
For about 4 seconds. If you could just get 4 seconds of fairly close digital quality film.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. That's why, I'm carrying that GoPro all the time. Who knows?
Yeah, you're carrying that GoPro all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was our 8th best piece of evidence.
Okay.
So now we jump into the 7th best piece of evidence. Got any ideas what this might be? We actually talked about this. So here we have I'm just going to get right into it. I think you know more about
Mississippi.
This is Mississippi. So for those of you watching, this thing is literally tearing a tree apart, probably getting bugs, termites, grubs, something out of this tree. It's fairly close. It looks like an ape. It does not know the person's there. It's throwing stuff. It's in the water. This looks fairly close. And honestly, I don't know if I'd be that close.
So I remember our friend Angela Ashton. Angela's in Georgia right now in the mountains. Used to be in Mississippi. She was the investigator that went and interviewed the witness. And I know that Angela was very compelled that she, she sent me some pictures of close-ups of that tree, and she believed completely that it was realistic. I've seen on the internet, there's some people that say that, it's a guy with a hood on, and he's trying to put his GoPro inside the tree.
I literally see ears right here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a guy with a hood on.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because no matter what the film is that you have, you always have skeptical people, just like I'm trying to think that one group that's on Facebook, the critical thinking, critical people, or whatever it happens to be. They just hack on pretty much everything and anything, and so it wouldn't matter what you had. If they got a body, they would be convinced that was a fake body or something. But
correct.
The people that are total believers are not any better than the people that are total skepticals. Either. I think it's healthier to be somewhere in between, probably.
Right. So
that was in Mississippi.
That was in Mississippi. You can get this on YouTube. It doesn't move a whole lot. It's sitting down in the water. It's all one color.
Yeah.
It just does not strike me as a man. If this man is trying to put a game camera in a tree, number one, he's going to not rip that bark off with one arm.
Yeah.
He's going to stand up, he's going to grab with two hands, and he's going to peel that back. So this thing never stands up.
At the end of the video, the guy, you can tell me he's very frantic and he takes off running. But in the interview, he said that, he was hunting, of course, and not that far from it, like a gravel or a park road. And the car came, and that's when it stopped, and it kind of looked back his way. And he said he wanted to keep filming, but he didn't. It just freaked him out. And he took off running before he even realized what he was doing. I mean, I think that, you hear witness after witness. I mean, we all sound tough and brave until something happens, and then, you're not so tough and brave. I remember one time, Brad, I was in this place and I saw a stump, and just the way that the stump was leaning, I thought that it was a Bigfoot. And I remember my heart went, just
right
so fast. So, I'm every day I'm out there that I can be. Of course, I was out there today, but I'll be out there Thursday, be out there this weekend. But I was, I don't know how I will handle it actually whenever it happens, if it gets to happen. But, I don't think that we should judge people for how they behave in an environment they're not expecting to be in.
Correct. Which, like I said, I've been in that situation one time, and I always made fun of people, and I will never do that again.
It's like a snake, I mean? Like if someone said, you're going to see a snake on this rock right up here in front of you, we wouldn't be as freaked out.
Right.
But you're walking, you look down, there's a freaking snake right by your freaking foot, and it freaks you out a little bit.
Yep, it does. So that gets us to 8, 7. Okay. Now we're at number 6. Now, so for those of you listening on the podcast and not watching it, this is some audio for you.
So where's that one from?
That's the Kentucky. There might be some better audio out there. That was given to us by our good friend
Monongahela.
Yep.
So is that the one, if I remember correctly, just so for the background, he was doing one of Charlie Raymond's expeditions. He was actually giving a talk at this remote location. And while he's doing this talk, he's playing sounds for people to hear. And they have a recorder going at a distance. He has no idea that there's all these sounds going on, that the Bigfoot are responding to the vocals that he's playing.
Correct.
Which is pretty cool because, there's people that go out and call blasts. They take these huge speakers. I can remember that. I don't know if you remember this, Brad. You and I were someplace in Ohio, and I carried one of those boom blaster boxes that we used to have. I carried it with all its 8D batteries in a backpack way in the middle of nowhere and played the Sierra sounds.
Right.
And, but, I was just watching there was a group I was in today that was guys that do audio recording, and they were saying that, once you do it the first time, they won't respond again. That first night, you'll get audio. Like if you go somewhere and do it, like, Devin or Monongahela wasn't trying to, but he was out there doing it. So then after that, they never responded again. in the same way the call blasters may get responses the first night, but then after that, they're done.
Right. I think you remember we were on Camp 70 Road, and I think Monongahela was doing some call blasting that night. And we had that big home run knock literally right below us.
Yes.
So we knew they were there. I don't know if they came in because of what he was playing, but I remember later that night we got a big home run knock very, very close to us.
I mean, the thing I remember most about that night is, we divided up, and I don't know if we talked about this or not, but we divided up into groups. There was probably 40 people coming off this mountain because, we were all done. And, you're spread out maybe a half mile apart, groups of, 5, 6, 7. You have a couple thermals, somebody experienced with you. Well, you're done and you're all walking down off the mountain, and we were all together. And there's this, when you get a loud wood knock, which no one's really sure whether it's a Bigfoot hitting something or whether it's a mouth pop or whether it's a hand clap, like some of the higher primates do, like the mountain gorillas or orangutans. But everybody save 3 people, me, you, and Tyler Bounds, that was on the Finding Bigfoot TV show, stopped and went over there to it because it was 20 yards from us.
Yeah.
And everyone else kept on rolling.
I think they ran.
They ran.
They did. It was that loud. And I remember because we were up by a clearing or something. And I think we went back up to the clearing and we were looking around trying to find this thing that made this noise. But man, it was so loud.
It was ridiculous when you hear one of those. I mean, it's shocking that something, can be that close to you and so loud. Of course, it's at night and you can't see anything. And, we did have thermals and we were looking over that mountainside, but, it's hard to see anything.
Right. And because that was the weekend I actually got my thermal footage, or I had my sighting. So we knew they were around. So, all right. So that was number 6. It was okay.
I think it was interesting was them responding to them without them having any idea that something was responding.
Correct.
Only when he went back later, it's, it really gives you something to consider.
Right.
But I know in general, I think that most of the people doing audio would say now that, I saw Chris Spencer, which you and I had on early in the podcast from the Olympic Project, and he has finished his whole year-long recording now. He's not through all of it, but he said that what he can say is that as a species, they are very quiet, that they do not make a lot of noises. And there's not nights that they just go nuts the whole night or something like that. He just said it's not common for them to make noises. Right. And Monongahela says that, when they do make a noise, they make a noise for a reason. So I think that, if you are a large 8-foot animal that has not been acknowledged, that, you probably can't be loud all the time, right? Or, kind of people would know where you were, or they'd say, we hear them coming from this one area all the time. They're always in there screaming or whatever it happens to be. So, it makes sense to me. And it really makes sense that during the day, you clearly do not hear very much, maybe a wood knock every now and then, or, I heard a scream one time during the day, but it is rare for you to hear something during the day.
Correct. All right. So we're down to number 5.
Okay.
So this piece of video,
while on a fishing trip with her family,
we're swiping this from Discovery Channel, Legend Meet Science, that our buddy Doug Hychek did. We're going to watch this and we're going to talk about this. So.
Okay.
And friends in Northeast Washington. This video clip, known as the Memorial Day footage, shows a hair-covered upright figure running across a mountainside.
Okay, see where the bush is? Yeah. And then there's a small pine tree? Mm-hmm. And then he was right behind that small pine tree, right?
While not greatly detailed, it has certain compelling aspects to it, including the movement and the high speed at which the figure appears to move across the rugged terrain.
He's all...
Bigfoot.
All on video.
So it's funny. It looks like it gets tired right when it gets to the woods. It's like, I'm close enough. I'm just going to go ahead and slow down and walk in. So I'm going to back this up. There is a shot in here. Right. It's tough to see. Right there.
movement and the high speed.
Okay, see that right there?
Yeah.
Number one, there used to be a video out there called 21 Degrees of Separation.
Yeah.
So the human walks, when they walk, their shin angle is, I do believe, 51 degrees.
I don't recall, but I know what you're...
And Patterson Gimlin is at 72. So these guys came out on the Patterson Gimlin film. They said, hey, I was the guy in the suit. I'm 6'6". I weigh 300 pounds. I was in this $3,000 suit that, a guy that got a warrant.
Philip Morris.
Yeah. You got a warrant put out for his arrest because he couldn't pay back the $12 to rent the camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for some reason, this guy bought a $3,000 suit, put a guy in it. So everybody does this. They do the arm swing and they do their thing, and they're doing the whole Patterson Gimlin, for what is that, frame 319 or whatever it is.
352.
They always forget one thing: the feet, the legs. Yeah. If you look at this one single frame, you see the back shin angle is much greater than 52 degrees. That is less than 90. I could say it's closer to that, 70, whatever. That's why I believe this Bigfoot right here is real. I have seen two Bigfoot cross. One was off the right side of my car one night, walking under a street lamp around a house in the same area, not 2 miles away. About a year and a half ago. Well, it's almost, it's about a year and 9 months ago. I saw one cross in front of my truck. This is what it looked like. This is the leg flip. This is why I know it was not a human. It was black from head to toe, and it almost glides when they run. And I do believe that this is an actual Bigfoot. And it's got characteristics that humans just can't do. Like this move right here, one frame to the next, boom, look at that. It's jumping and running at the same time.
A lot of times people will point out on this too, when it jumped there, you can kind of see something on the back move, and people speculate that, there was an infant or juvenile that was holding on to the back of it. And then when you get to the very end of the film, it gets taller all of a sudden. So people believe that, that was the juvenile or the infant kind of, raising it up or whatever it happened to be.
Right. So we have talked to Mr. Highcheck about this, or you have.
Yeah, which was the producer of that television show.
Correct. And he had some inside information.
Yeah.
And what is that inside information?
Well, he said, of course, they had went there because there was a history of sightings there, and there was actually rangers that had sightings. But I know that after they were done filming this, that there was rangers that had actually said that, they had sightings and that they had actually found footprints there.
So that's corroborating as an evidence, correct?
Yeah, but no one talks about that. I mean, when this, they're working on Legend versus Science 2 now, which, I'm not sure when that'll be out. But when they're doing that, a lot of times, people's jobs are in jeopardy. Back then, it wouldn't have been politically correct. I'm not even sure about now that they could have said, hey, I'm a ranger and I've seen a Bigfoot and I found tracks. And, you probably couldn't say that. Right.
And honestly, I remember watching the show, and I think they put a GPS or something on a Sprinter, and the Sprinter ran across there in the allotted time to this thing. So it couldn't have been. It's a human can do it. Well, these things aren't super magical. They still have to move physically, and that thing was moving pretty quick. If it's a guy in a suit, he's moving awful quick. So I don't think it's a guy in a suit. But like I said, the way that the legs move, you look at the shin angle. I believe that's a true Bigfoot. And
I think that another thing too is once again, the age that film is, the quality of the video, which was great for then, is not very good for now. Now we'd have this awesome video, but then it's like the things you find on YouTube, which people, testify that are real, that, you just can't be sure whether it's CGI or it's, some guy faking. It's, it's hard to do it now.
Or a lot of stuff is, you see it, and you can obviously, we've seen enough of these. It's not real. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I see some of these Instagram channels or YouTube or whatever it is. It's like, oh, man catches Bigfoot walking. No, it's a guy. He's carrying a backpack. I mean, I can see it.
Yeah.
So it's clickbait. So you never really know what's
for me, probably 99% of the time, just because I see patients for these last 31 years, I just know proportions so well that just with a glance, I can tell, whether or not the proportions are man-like, because clearly we know that Bigfoot's proportions, while it's an upright, hominid or hominin, it has longer arms.
Correct.
Than humans do, and probably the upper part of the legs are a little longer in relation to the lower part of the legs than a human.
Correct. All right, so that gets us to part number 4.
Okay.
And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because we just had this gentleman on the podcast about a week ago. Mr. Matt Moneymaker got this over, or actually he helped facilitate a gentleman get this at his house, I do believe so, over several nights using VHS tapes. It was very difficult. It's not like we do today. It is the Ohio Howl.
That's kind of the standard, right? I mean, everybody on all the shows and everything else, everybody knows what the Ohio Howl is if you do Bigfoot stuff. And have you ever heard that in the woods, Brad?
I absolutely have. I will give you a story. We used to live not too far away from where I live now, but our property kind of backed up to the park. It's a national scenic river, several thousand acres, north to south. It's the same park that was connected to where I had two of my sightings. I'd actually talked to park rangers, and literally there were people that, they were walking their dog on a 7 o'clock in the morning, and they turn around a corner and what was that? They were turning the corner, and literally they ran across a Bigfoot in the middle of the trail.
Right.
So I know that they're around. I took several other reports, so I know that they're in the area. And I was with I was in the backyard. My son, Brody, was with 2 of his friends, and they were walking back through this, our land, we had about 80 acres, but it was very, very deep. It was like 1,100 feet deep. So it was a quarter mile deep.
Right.
So they're actually walking back to the back of the woods because they're, just, I don't know, they got nothing else to do. And we were out there.
Because they didn't have computers then to be on in games and stuff.
No, they didn't. No, they're not. I'm sure they did. But they were kind of outdoorsmen, deer hunters, duck hunters, mess with their trucks. That's what they're doing. So they were out, and Brody described it to him one time, this Bigfoot. He said, these things sound like these fire engines, the siren on a fire truck, just this long, howl, and it's just, you can just feel it in your bones. And they were literally walking back through the field, and I was on the back porch, and something in the woods let out the Ohio Howl, and it was very long and very deep. And they stopped, and my son turned around to his friends, and he goes, I think that was a Bigfoot, and the only thing he saw was their backs running towards the house. They didn't stick around. They were done. They were going back to the house. So yeah, that was the only time I've ever heard the Ohio Howl.
I heard it one time in West Virginia during the day, but that's the only time I ever got to hear it. Okay.
All right. Well, let's move on. So number 3,
Oh, there you go.
We had this gentleman on. This is a short clip from the video. We know the complete backstory of this. We know what this man did. We know what this man went through to get this video. This is Paul.
Oh, there he goes.
This thing walks, turns, looks, and keeps on going.
Jesus.
So, you know, this video is actually, I think, 6 or 7 minutes long. We're not going to do that.
Get up here where I can see me quick.
So, number one, this thing walks, it turns and looks. The mass that this thing has is unbelievable to me.
Yeah, because you remember it hasn't been released to the public yet. Well, I guess it has been. If the people have the book, they can see it. But at the end of this footage, you can actually see an infant. It picks up apparently a juvenile, and you can just see the legs fly. And so I believe that what we're looking at now is a postpartum Bigfoot that has had a baby not that long prior to that film. You know, it's interesting too, because, you know, of course, we did an episode with Michael Freeman, Paul Freeman's son.
Right.
I mean, he was in that lost soil, the LOESS soil that we were just talking about earlier that holds prints. You know, he's in a place where they're prone to droughts every summer, and they're in an area where no one's allowed to be in because it's supplying water to Walla Walla, Washington, 35,000 acres. You know, perfect place for them to be. Here in Appalachia, we very, very seldom have issues with droughts. You know, we just have a lot of water around. So we don't have that perfect spot like Paul Freeman did.
Correct.
You know, to be able to get that. I remember for a long time, I kind of went back and forth with that footage, depending upon who I was talking to and how much they knew. But after doing the interview and reading the book, and, you know, I had just a small portion of editing that I did in that book, just watching for mistakes and stuff. You know, I really am certain now that, you know, it was in fact the real deal.
I agree 1,000%. You know, after talking to his son, hearing what he had to go through to get that video, just the mass of that thing. And then if you do get the book, they do have some things in there, which that's why we do not show. There's some enhanced video. They do some contrast. They do some head snap. They stabilize it. They really get in there, and you're right. You get to the end of that video, and this thing, there is an infant there. So if you're going to fake it, how are you going to have an infant?
Yeah,
it makes no sense to me. If you know the backstory, because not everything is just a piece of video. It could be a great piece of video, but if it's a crappy backstory and it doesn't make sense, then
how about like they didn't even see that baby until what, over a decade later? So
right.
You're going to choose to make your fake Bigfoot postpartum,
right.
and then make sure that you fling up some fake infant juvenile legs so that it can be found, you know, mysteriously and mistakenly over a decade later.
Correct.
I mean, you know, it just doesn't even make sense.
It does not make sense. So that's
the Freeman footage.
That was Freeman footage. That was that was the third. We're up to number 2. So
this one might have a little bias here.
This one you do have some bias here.
Yeah.
This is the Bruno Howls captured on 2 consecutive days in October 2013 in Bruno, West Virginia, your home state. So we're going to listen to this.
You kind of hear this in the beginning. You can hear some different things, and you think, oh, you know, I can kind of hear that. And you think, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. You can kind of hear it. But it's just getting started. Later that afternoon, it's back. Next day, weather's dry. And then later that day, that one hound man was 20 seconds long.
Yeah.
I mean, go outside and yell as loud as you can. You can't do it that anyways that loud, but do that for 20 seconds. But the backstory on that, interestingly, this little town, Bruno, West Virginia, just south of Logan, West Virginia, has like 8 houses. It's just this little area in this hollow with steep, steep mountainsides that you just can't imagine when you're there how steep they are. And you wonder how the trees, can even grow when it's that steep.
Right.
But this little church lady from one of those houses was on her porch and was recording that with her iPhone. And of course, early in it, you can hear that it was raining and you could hear chickens and the dogs barking a little bit or whatever. But by the end the other day, when it was drier, it was great. But it was funny because the lady, she has a Facebook page. She has a couple hundred friends. They're all people that she goes to church with or high school with. And she's on there sharing, appetizers and meals for the church Sunday buffet. And she posts that on there saying, does anybody have any idea what that is? Well, it went crazy. And this little church lady from West Virginia got literally in one day thousands and thousands of friends requests because people shared it and the Bigfoot people recognized that it was a Bigfoot and everybody reached out to the lady. And, I left a message for her saying, hey, I know people there, this is my name. I live here. I'm not very far from you. Can I talk to you? And then I tried friending a friend of hers so that I could, get a message to her that way. And she just dropped out of Bigfoot world, of Facebook world. She never had any contact with anybody. And recently, just maybe in the last couple of months, I had another witness who told me that he had a friend of hers that he knew, and he was trying to reach out to see if she would talk to me finally after, all these years. But I still haven't talked to her. And I understand it's not the only time that it happened, that they'd heard that a couple of different times as well.
So how far is Bruno, West Virginia from where you're at in Charleston?
It is, let's say it's 1 hour south of Charleston, West Virginia.
Okay. So
it's in the coal fields.
Okay. So the thing that strikes me about this whole thing, it's a little church lady. She did the audio. She doesn't want to be recognized. We've all seen the video, I'm sure, if we're in the Bigfoot world, of the rain on the front porch and then everything going crazy. We used Sasquatch bioacoustics version with some stuff cleared up so we could hear it better. The simple fact that this thing is making noise, it sounds like it's in tremendous pain.
Yeah. Is that how you felt it?
That's
you
how I felt. Either emotional pain, physical pain. Did this thing fall off a cliff and break its leg? So it started crying the one day and then, nobody's come to help. So it starts again the second day. I don't know. It's making a 911 call.
Prior to that, meaning like in a couple of years from that, in that general area, we would always have a loud vocalization from somewhere in that general area. I remember that around Logan, West Virginia, there was a Girl Scout camp that was like 500 acres that a local car dealer had bought. The only way onto the property was this little gated over a creek, so nobody could get in there. And it's not like one of the other states, like Ohio or Pennsylvania or something where people can come in from the backside. And some places in West Virginia, it's so steep and there's so many cliffs and there's no access. There's just no way for people to get in. And I know that there was a pharmacist and his brother was the car dealer or something. And he was in there hunting and the car dealer's son was in there hunting. And they started hearing very, very loud screaming and vocalizations. And it was close to dark. And I know that he said he heard running, and the running was his nephew running from his tree stand. And then he just heard his truck start and he backed out and he left.
Really?
Yeah. And I interviewed the pharmacist, and, he was compelling. And, and by that time, like I said, I'd already had documented several vocals down there. About that time of the year was going to happen every year. But I mean, I don't think that it was something like this. You know what I mean? Like, I think it was, people would talk about a scream or something, but this went on for 3 days. I think, like you said, it seems like there was something more to it.
Right.
It
hit me emotionally that something was there.
Yeah. I mean, it clearly, it's been analyzed on people's computers with computer software by people that are professionals and, recognizing sounds, audiologists or whatever they would happen to be. They're related to wildlife. The diaphragm is longer than a human's is. It's just not capable for a human to make that noise. I mean, the only thing really it could be is some type of equipment. And to me, it does not sound like that there was a piece of equipment up there. And if you were ever down there and you looked up on that mountainside, you'd say, there's no piece of equipment on that freaking mountainside. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Right. So,
but if you're a cynic and skeptic sitting in your mom's basement in California, you can say what you want to say.
Right. And in fact, I think you do remember when I got some pretty good, somebody turned me on to some good Bigfoot prints. I went and cast them, and they were, 14 or 15 inches long. They were 9 inches wide at the toes, and they were very good. At the end of a road in the middle of nowhere, on a Thursday morning, it had rained. They still had a little bit of water in them, and had nobody been down this path. And I posted the pictures on a website, and I literally got in an argument with somebody telling me that it was a double bear print. And
double bear print?
It was a double bear print. I'm like, it's not a double bear print. He's like, yeah, it's a double bear print. He's from California. He sees them all the time. I'm like, well, number one, the bears that we have in Ohio are very small. They're not, 9 inches wide at the toes.
And at that point, there was like 20 of them in the whole state.
Right. There's no claw marks. And I found several. So for this bear to continually walk sideways, because this Bigfoot actually walked sideways around a tree, we think it was watching something across a creek. And that's what it was actually doing to make some of these tracks. It just wasn't a bear. And this guy's trying to argue with me, and he's an expert in California. And I'm like,
that's why so many people don't turn stuff in. I mean, like,
right.
People sincerely will post something on the internet, and half the people believe it instantly without knowing anything about it. And the other half are hacking on the person without knowing anything about it.
Right. And then you have your friends make fun of you constantly at the conferences that I had a set of double bear print casts.
That's right. Well, that might be true. They might take advantage of, you having a double bear.
Right. A double bear
best up there.
and I did have Dr. Meldrum look at it, and he said it was not a bear. So I got his signature right on the back of it. So,
like I said, I think that when Bigfoot is acknowledged, that everybody's going to be shocked at how much evidence will come out all at once from all these people that have been holding stuff, hiding stuff, because they don't want to be called silly or stupid or, a liar or whatever happened, because who needs it? I mean, life is hard enough for a lot of people that, we don't need to do that anyways, right?
Correct. Okay, so that was number 2.
Okay.
That means we are down to number 1.
Okay.
Except 1A, which I'm going to throw it in here, and you don't know about this one.
Okay.
But you do.
We're in for Nightville.
Which one's off this?
So
Okay.
that could continue on for a while, but you know
Yeah.
exactly what that is.
That's the Sierra Sounds from the Sierra Nevada mountains in California in the early 70s. Al Berry, Ron Moorhead. They were at a hunting camp. It was an 8-mile horse ride in to get this hunting camp, and they started having, you know, these Bigfoot encounters, these purported Bigfoot encounters. It's interesting, you know, that's so popular. You have, I'm trying to think of the gentleman that does the crypto analyst. They analyzed it and said it was actually a language.
Didn't they send it somewhere in Oklahoma, I do believe, wasn't it?
Okay, I can't remember the gentleman's name. It's escaping me right now. But, you know, it's interesting because I know that, you know, there's been some tracks that maybe some of the scientists that are interested in Bigfoot didn't necessarily like the tracks. You know, I know they had other encounters that, you know, over the course of time. We should probably get Ron Moorhead on sometime to talk about that.
Sure.
But, you know, it's weird and that something is so loud. Of course, they're 8 miles back in there, so they're probably not encountering humans very much. But, you know, you wonder about why you didn't continue to be able to get that later.
Correct.
I'd be curious, but...
Well, anybody can go out. I mean, Google the Sierra Sounds. There's a bunch of it out there. Listen to it. Ron Moorhead, you know, he's got a book out, The Quantum Bigfoot. So
yeah,
there's some woo things in there that, you know, I would love to talk to him about at some point because you and I are more flesh and blood. But
yeah, I think that's what happens sometimes. Though, you know, people start out believing that, you know, it's probably an animal that hasn't been, you know, acknowledged yet. But then as time goes on, you know, you just don't get evidence and you just don't have encounters. And so then you start opening up to the idea that, you know, there may be something supernatural, paranormal to it. I don't think that I necessarily agree with that. I just haven't personally, you know, had that happen to me or whatever yet. But I know that it does happen to people. It's funny, you know, people that I meet that have had encounters, and I can think of 2 guys just in this past year that had close encounters, and, you know, both of them are going to get involved in Bigfoot, and both of them are going to, you know, start having a YouTube channel and all this other stuff. But then, you know, here you are 6 months later and they're not doing it. And they're not doing it because, you know, it's just rare. I mean, even for someone like me that's in the woods so much, it's very, very rare for me to find something Bigfoot related.
Correct.
Just doesn't happen that much.
Right. I mean, like I said, we were talking earlier, and, you know, you saw a track and you didn't even cast it because, you know, I've literally seen you walk over $10 because you wouldn't even, it's not worth your time to stop and pick it up.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think that you know, you want to see one of those tracks, like when you look at those Freeman tracks, you know, like,
oh, yeah.
why can't I get something
Right.
like that? Or,
Great.
but the reality is, you know, I don't know that I've ever seen more than one track in a row. You know, you see like a scuff from where it hit a couple more times, but
Right.
I've never seen one where it walked, you know, right down some timber road or
Right.
a gas oil road or something, you know, where I could see. And I Like I told you, I think that they're cognizant of leaving their footprints, much like mountain lions and monkeys are. And so I try to be that way too. I try not to step in mud if I don't have to. If I can walk around it or whatever, I'm going to do it too.
Correct.
Maybe they're cognizant of, they see a footprint and they know someone's been in that area or whatever. And why would I let them know that I've been there?
I never thought about that. We're looking for their signs of them. They're looking for signs of us.
Yeah.
So,
I think they're hyper vigilant. I don't remember who came up with that word, but Chris Noel uses the term. He thinks that they're almost like on an autism spectrum about how careful and picky they are just about every little movement. But I like hyper vigilant a lot better, that they pay so close attention to everything. And I was listening to this witness talk about, when he grew up, there was apple trees that were in his yard, and about 25 yards from an apple tree, there was a brushy woods area, and he had watched them come, and they would just come one at a time. And he said, just to cover that little distance, he said it would be minutes, 10, 15 minutes to cover just that little bit. They would move one little bit at a time. And then when they got there, only one would stand up at a time. They're so careful all the time.
Right. Okay. So that gets us down to number one.
Okay.
And everybody knows this one.
Yeah.
No audio, just the video. That's Patty walking across, stabilized, pretty good. I don't know who did this. I don't know if this MK Davis did this.
I think MK Davis did that one.
If you notice, we get right back here. We're going to go ahead and pause it. Look at the shin angle right there. That's 72 degrees, more like the Memorial Day footage. It continues to walk. Everybody that attempts to do this always gets the legs wrong. They always get the arm swing correct. And then it keeps walking off and it's gone. So there are two reasons I believe there's no doubt in my mind that this is not real. Number one, which you and I have sat and had breakfast with Mr. Bob Gimlin on more than one occasion.
Yeah, the gentleman who was there on the horse when this happened.
Yep, he was. Roger Patterson was shooting the video. Bob Gimlin was on the horse. The horse was acting up. He literally pulls his rifle out of the scabbard on the side of the horse. I do believe he kind of pushed it over the top of the horse because he was. If this thing turned, you're talking about this video camera. This thing looks like it's pretty good ways away. It's not that far away.
I want to say they said it was 45 yards or 50 yards away,
right,
if I remember right.
Which is not very far.
No.
This thing, the way he talked, this thing could turn and go after you, after them. He was going to put a bullet in it. He was covering his buddy. These guys have been up there. Like I said earlier, that Roger Patterson had rented the video camera. It wasn't even his. He rented it, went up. He could not pay, I do believe it was around $12 in rental fee when he returned it, or because he had it out longer. They issued a warrant for this man's arrest over $12 back in the day. He could not afford a $3,000 suit that supposedly this thing was. And number two, on the anniversary of this video, I do believe the 50th anniversary, we were at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, and Jeff Meldrum did a 1.5 hour talk on this video right here. It was the greatest 1.5 hours that I'd ever heard talking about Bigfoot. Mr. Meldrum, Dr. Meldrum started at the top of the head, literally went down the entire body of this thing, all the way down to the feet, the whatever it is, the bottom of the pads, discussing every anatomical piece of this video and this creature. And there is absolutely zero chance in 1967 that Hollywood could ever duplicate this thing.
And it said as much. They went to Walt Disney. Walt Disney
Correct.
said that they could not do it.
Correct.
Go ahead.
And well, the comment was, if this man could do this, he would have been in Hollywood making millions of dollars.
Yeah, they had the gentleman that said he was in a suit named Bob Hieronymus.
Right. Weren't they neighbors or something?
They were neighbors. Well, he's neighbors with Bob Gimlin, lives on the same road. And they, he said that he had got a suit, and Philip Morris, which was a costume maker in North Carolina, said he provided a suit, but, he could never produce a suit. And later, some TV show had him made a suit and gave him the money to make one. And it was just literally a joke when you tried to compare him. It was silly.
Right.
The film Slide 352 is when Patty turns and looks back at the cameraman. That's when Bob Gimlin crossed the creek on his horse, and she turned and looked back at him because he had crossed, I guess looking to see, if he was coming after her. I thought it was interesting, too, that they had a tracker come out there. And, of course, they have, I don't forget how many of the tracks that they cast, a lot of them. They're all different. They're all in soil that the gentlemen, the trackers that come couldn't reproduce. They tracked her up on a hill, and apparently she'd went up on this mountainside where she could look down there, and I guess she watched them for a time before she moved on. But, there's literally now, I don't know how many books, at least a couple different books, that are hundreds of pages long, just about the Patterson-Gimlin film. There's some other cynics that have written books about it, but I don't really think that anybody's taking them seriously. Most of the people that are really interested in Bigfoot have, listened to so many lectures and read so many books that, we're still learning things from this film.
Even, it's got like a tendon something. What's the band around the quad that had torn?
It had a hernia, I think, that people speculated, in like the iliotibial band or something that.
Right. So the thing about that was, I remember Dr. Meldrum specifically saying that he had a class and he was teaching whatever, and they actually had a student in the class that had the exact same injury. And I think she was a gymnast or something, and literally her leg did the exact same thing with that muscle. And him talking about that just, tells me that, man, these people aren't making this up. It's a female. Nobody's going to put breasts on it. It's just not something you think about. That's added expense, added scrutiny. And why would you do it?
Yeah. So. Yeah. These are, we can't in just a couple of minutes go back, but to believe that a broke rodeo cowboy that couldn't afford to pay for the rental of the machine that he was using would drive, 12 hours or 9 hours or whatever it was to this remote location when he lived in Washington, that he just couldn't choose a remote place, an hour or so from his house and do it.
Right.
He didn't have the money to be doing all that. It was,
right.
It doesn't even make really logical sense, but
no. And I think they'd heard some rumors that these things were going on down there at Bluff Creek. So they went and got their horses. They went back, 15 miles, I do believe.
Yeah.
Off the nearest paved road. They went back there on these horses and they camped and they did all this stuff. And, like I said, you talk to Bob Gimlin, he's still around. He's still doing very well. His mind is sharp as a tack. And you just look at this man, and this man, there's no doubt that this is actual truth.
I think that probably, if I had to guess, that, Patterson had probably created or had some type of costume. They had Bob Hieronymus walk in or whatever for him to film, kind of like what a Bigfoot may look like or something. And I wonder if, something didn't happen like that, because, Hieronymus he never went away. He wasn't there that weekend that they were all down there or whatever. And he didn't go all the way down there. He didn't even know where it was.
Right.
So I suspect that there's probably a little bit of the truth for him, but that's just me guessing that, they might have did something like that, reenacted something, or,
right.
I don't know, before maybe even that happened. I have no idea, but, I think that sets a standard. It's hard to believe that, we don't have more accepted footage. There's clearly a lot better footage than that, but, it's all called into question.
Right.
there's probably people that maybe are listening to you and I are like, mine's great and everybody hacks on it. And I know it's true. And,
Right.
what do you do?
What do you do?
Yeah.
So we've gone 15 minutes over
Okay.
tonight. And
That's because you were talking about stuff. It was not me, clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is the 10 best pieces of evidence out there that we believe. There may be others. If you did not make the list and you want to argue with us, that's great. Contact us. Come on the
Reach
show.
out.
That would be awesome, because
Yeah.
we'd love to hear from people. If you have a better piece of evidence somewhere in your on your computer that you're afraid to let it out, give it to us. We'll block out your name, your face, and you can come on and talk about it. And we don't do a live show, so no one's going to make fun of you. And we don't read the YouTube comments, so anybody can say whatever they want.
And if you're a skeptic, you want to come on and argue with us about it, love to have you.
That's fine too.
That'd be fun.
I would love to have someone that does not believe in Bigfoot come on here and want to argue with us. So.
Hey, so if they want to reach out to us, the bigfootdoc.com, like, subscribe. We appreciate everybody that's watching. I know that we haven't been on very long and we're getting quite a few followers, so that's good.
We appreciate that. wideopenresearch@gmail.com, at wideopenresearch on Instagram. Follow all that stuff, DM us, whatever. Russ and I both monitor that account, so we'll get your stuff. If you got anything you want to talk about, anything you want to share, that would be great. We'd love to hear you. So, all right.
Peace out.
Peace out. We're out
Good to see you, my friend.